fortunate to have Dr. Joshua Steinerman of White Plains Hospital, who will talk about brain fitness or brain failure, normal versus abnormal brain aging. Dr. Steinerman is a board-certified behavioral neurologist and neuropsychiatrist with specialty interest in aging and cognition. Educated and trained at Harvard, Yale, and Columbia, how about that? And in the heart of Brooklyn, Dr. Steinerman's long-term ambition is to contribute to the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. Since 2008, he served as an assistant professor at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and in 2010 was appointed the Lewis and Gertrude Fell Faculty Scholar in Neurology. Since 2007, he's been attending neurologist at White Plains Hospital. He founded Longevity Neuroscience in 2008. It's a cognitive consultancy dedicated to minding the aging brain and disseminating research material. So I think we're all going to find out if we have seen moments, if it's more serious than that, or whatever. But we're just delighted to have you, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ellie. As you heard, I wore a few different hats. I'm working in the Bronx full-time on faculty, and actually I really enjoy going out to the community where I usually put on a different angle on things, and I try to make it a little bit more participatory, a little less formal, and that's why we've established the Center for Healthy Brain Aging, which has a positive spin, and you can all feel free to call me Dr. Joshua. This is really a conversation. And I want to tell you why I go out into the community and why I'm so happy to be here at Home on the Sound today. I mean, the main reason, I'm perfectly honest, is because I love the brain. And today we're going to be talking about the brain. I'm really crazy about the brain. But I also want to tell you that I love to find out what's inside of people's brains. Right? Of course, when I'm in the hospital and in the office, a lot of times that has to do with things going wrong in the brains, and stroke and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all the things. But when I go into the community, I really want to hear the great things that are inside your brains. Those are your ideas. And you have a lot to contribute today, and this really is going to be a discussion, and we're going to really want to hear from you. And I want to tell you a little bit why I was a little disappointed about today's event. I was asked to speak for an hour, leaving a little time for questions and answers. And I thought that was way too skewed. So in fact, we're going to do the whole thing is going to be questions and answers today. And that means we're going to involve you. I have all these sheets where you see there are a number of really excellent and provocative questions. I'll tell you a little bit about why I'm asking those questions. But we're really going to ask everyone to pick the one that strikes you and actually step up and give an answer so we can initiate discussions. So I'm going to start things off, and I'm going to just ask Ellie or anyone else, if they want to pass this to people who haven't yet gotten their form, we'll make sure everybody's fully prepared for today's discussion. There is no homework, there is no pressure, only good ideas, okay? Just about everybody is now prepared. So you can see there are two categories which we're going to explore here. One of them on the left column, and on the back there are more, has all to do with attitudes about brain aging, attitudes about what you think about minding your own brain, getting tested, what you think aging well is about. And on the right has to do with what people here think about participating in research or research related to healthy brain aging. And I want to be clear, I'm not recruiting for any study. This is not about anything in particular. But I personally believe, and I want to hear your views on this, that research can be good for you. And not everyone has that view on research, so anyone here could obviously challenge me on that and give me their views. But especially when it comes to healthy brain aging and preventing Alzheimer's disease, where there's so much yet to learn, and let's be frank, the medical system has relatively little to offer in this area. In general, prevention is not really emphasized to the extent it ought to be. And in particular, in Alzheimer's, there's a lot that still needs to be developed and introduced to the community in the real world. And that's why research is the opportunity, because I do believe that there's amazing progress in recent years, and actually people who step up and participate not only contribute to science and knowledge, but I personally believe can benefit themselves. So people are able to pick any of the questions that they see and answer and start a discussion, but I really want to get it off with the first question here. And this isn't personal, so without mentioning a name, please, I would really invite anyone here, describe someone you know who is aging well or aging successfully. Yes, please.
My mother lived to 96, and was extremely, her mind was always terrific. And I thought that was because she did not have any problems with high blood pressure. She never had high blood. Is that related?
I'll just summarize, just so everyone can be sure that we hear. Thank you for that contribution. You raised a few great points. First of all, her mother lived to age 96, which, again, in most people's books is quite an accomplishment. The key here, and I think this is true, that people don't want simply longevity, but they want, as you say, to maintain vital mental life and healthy brain function to the very last day, if possible. One factor which was introduced here, and it could be true that people who live that long and healthy are just blessed with a whole range of benefits, and many of this is genetic, and we're studying that intensely at Einstein. But in particular, the absence of vascular risk factors. In other words, things that affect your blood vessels, your blood supply to your heart, or your blood supply to the brain, are undoubtedly a major protective factor. So thank you for bringing that up. High blood pressure is one of the key risk factors for developing blood vessel problems. Can anybody tell me the others?
Trauma, injury.
Trauma could certainly injure blood vessels.
Diabetes?
Diabetes is an extremely important and common one.
Obesity.
Obesity, and all the metabolic problems that go along with obesity, like cholesterol problems, and everybody here knows about these things. Not everyone realizes the connection between blood vessel health and heart health and the brain. And that's one of the key messages that we get from this volunteer that points out that actually the brain and the heart are extremely well connected. So many of the things that we'll talk about today, which can promote healthy brain aging, should be very familiar to you because you know that everybody's talking about doing it for your heart. I don't know if everyone's doing it, but if they're doing it for the heart, I believe that many people will use the fact that this could actually protect their brain as additional motivation. And so making that link clear is very important. Yes?
Well, would not intensive physical exercise help the heart and therefore help the brain?
Yes.
Circulation?
Yes. I can see we're already moving a little bit into one of our other questions, which is great. This is all supposed to be, hearing from you. But the point that was just made is that physical exercise, specifically aerobic exercise, and actually there was a large consensus meeting down at the NIH this spring which evaluated all these factors. When it comes to healthy brain aging and protecting against Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, out of all the healthy lifestyles one could imagine doing, physical exercise is number one. There's the most evidence. There's a very strong biological rationale why physical exercise protects your brain. And it's not simply that what's good for your heart is good for the brain. Physical exercise, even in young people, can make people's brain function improve. And this is another area of intense exploration. And those people who are motivated, there's a lot of research around this area. So you could engage in the physical exercise and see the benefits to your brain if you engage in those projects. Yes?
I have a friend who takes multiple exercise classes and dance classes. And the ranges are from the 60s, the oldest I think is 87, who I'm told is terrific. But in the dance classes, my friend was pointing out, she feels that by having to remember all these steps, it's not just the physical activity, but having to remember the steps, she feels will help her. And when the instructor was starting to kind of dumb down for the class what they were doing, and they said, no, leave it in. We want it.
Thank you, Jan. Jan makes an extremely important point. And the point is that if you choose the right activity to do, you could benefit on many levels. And that actually brings us down here to the bottom right on the page where the aging successfully question is. And you can see there's an emerging concept called brain fitness. Brain fitness is not exactly obscure, hard to imagine, but it has to do with lifestyle behaviors that you can do and people you know can do that in aggregate will promote healthy brain aging and protect against Alzheimer's and other cognitive disorders. So let's look at what elements make up brain fitness. And you see here in the italics, the first one I highlighted is because of my bias. I'm interested in intellectual and cognitively stimulating activities. It's cognitive enrichment. But the next one is physical activity and balanced nutrition and social engagement. So if you go to a dance class, not hard to see that you're already getting potentially 3 of these, right? Physical activity, social engagement, and cognitive enrichment by virtue of remembering and rehearsing the moves. And if you have a proper snack either before or after, you'll hit the 4th pillar of brain fitness, and now you'll have your brain protected for today. Then what are you going to do tomorrow? So let's move to the back page here. And it says, describe the things that we can do to keep our brains healthy and preserve our memory and our thinking abilities as we age. So what are the things we can do, Ellie?
Learn new things.
Learn new things. Give me some more concrete examples, like coming down here to At Home on the Sound.
Absolutely. Or bridge.
Bridge.
Or chess, or any of those things.
Right, and you could already see that some of those involve social engagement and probably other brain fitness behaviors too. Yes?
Crossword puzzles.
Crossword puzzles. Who here does crossword puzzles? You know, I know many people who are beholden to their crossword puzzle, and I think it's great. And actually, we have some research at Einstein that of all the activities we've sampled, that happens to be one of the more protective activities. But I also know the crossword puzzle type, and I don't do crossword puzzles, so forgive me. They do it every day, and it becomes almost routine, and it becomes rote. And so what I encourage everybody who raised their hand, tomorrow try something different, or at least in addition to your crossword puzzle. Because one of the ideas that is very widely proposed here, and I think there's a good rationale for it, and we should study this more, it's actually variety and novelty, which is extremely engaging and stimulating. So the people who didn't raise their hand, start your crossword puzzles. But the people who did, think about something else that you can do as well. What else can we do to keep our brains healthy?
Have a passion for your sport teams or social causes, political causes. Have a strong passion.
Passion, I like it.
Engagement.
Engagement.
Yeah.
I wish we could study this better. This is something kind of nebulous, this idea that you're passionate, that you're motivated, that you have goals. You know, if we could study that, or better yet, if we could package it and share it with all of us, I think we would find that we would really be aging well and aging successfully. When I go into communities and talk to people about this, there's something there that is really important, and people recognize it, and we need to figure out how to really, maybe even share it with others.
Travel to a new place.
Travel to a new place. Which of the brain fitness behaviors do you think that'll cover? Definitely can be cognitively stimulating if you do the right things when you're there. Usually it's quite physically active, and I think that's I mean, people often talk about travel, and take me with you. Social engagement, usually.
Take classes, for instance, at our adult education continuing ed here. You can take Tai Chi, line dancing, languages, film.
Paint, sculpt, do the arts.
Somebody's bringing up art and creative activities, and I just want to expand a little bit about what I said earlier. Obviously, this is just an introduction, right? But you just reminded me of something, Helen. What I wanted to say, if you look at the brain fitness behaviors, cognitive enrichment, physical activity, balanced nutrition, and social engagement, when you think about social engagement, I really think much broader than what you might think about meeting and greeting and things like that. And there are a whole range of what I call the S's that are important here. So for a lot of people, that could be stress management, or really sleep hygiene, or for other people, it could be spiritual endeavors. So there's really a much broader range of activities which people engage in specifically to make their brains healthy. And I think, again, it's something that's highly promising. People who are aging successfully, those are often the things people point to. So I would either keep it up or start doing it now. Yes?
I think it's a lot innate attitude and an outlook and response to stress.
For a few very important issues. The idea here was about stress. And I can't stress this enough. It's bad. And we all have too much of it. Maybe people here have more, maybe people here have less. It is pervasive and it's damaging, and it's another area of intense study. And in fact, something we're looking at too in the Einstein aging study. one of the factors which was emphasized here, it is an individual's reaction to stressful activity which actually magnifies the stress. And a lot of it has to do with a sense of control. You know, this could be a whole program in its own right, and probably there are people better equipped than me to tell you about how to do stress management. But one of the issues which was raised here is that this might be innate. Some people might just be stuck with stress their whole life. It's just the way they are, who they are, maybe they got it from their parents or somebody else, and I actually want to challenge you on that. I think all of this, all of what we're talking today about prevention and about promoting healthy behaviors will be stuck in the dirt. It'll be left on the curb. It'll be not really actualized if people have the attitude that this is innate, not malleable, there's nothing we can do. And I think, if I'm not over-speaking, this raises a whole other issue about apathy, which is really the opposite. It's the flip side of what you were saying, Frank. And I think apathy is the enemy. And I think if people truly believe that there are certain things that there is nothing we can do about it, and that we don't have control over our own brains or our own destiny, you know, I think there's a lot of lost opportunity there.
Not to be argumentative, but just further to this discussion, and I'm Irish, so maybe there's some genetic thing here. My way of dealing with stress is to let it all out raw, bang, kick. And I had a number of friends, especially in business, especially when you manage, where they try to contain it. And I can see what it does at ages, and I feel my approach was just blow it out and then just have a laugh afterwards. Shake the hands of the guy or person you're having a discussion with. And the lady next to me might not agree. She works with stress management. But being civil, containing it, I don't think is helpful. Oh, you do? Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. You're probably Irish too.
Yes, right.
If you enjoy younger people, I think there are opportunities in the schools. I've been lucky, I go into an elementary school and I read to kids that are too small to push me around. And I thought I'd relate very quickly one short experience. I was reading with this first grader, a big young lady, and she was able to read, so I let them read. And she stops all of a sudden, looks at me, she says, "You know, I can read minds." Oh, I said, "Oh, really?" She said, "Yes, I know what you're thinking." I said, "What am I thinking?" She said, "You wish you were young."
Is she right?
I couldn't make it up. So interpret it as you wish. But anyhow, you run into some wonderful stuff, and these small human beings, actually, they break me up every time I go in the room.
Well, I really want to thank Fred for sharing that for a few reasons. One of them is that everybody sees here that I'm not kidding when I say on the paper, these are things you can do. And Fred is doing it, and maybe we'll all have things that we are doing and we'll share it. But I specifically want to address this issue of work in the schools and actually civic engagement. And this I do think has a little bit too to do with this idea of motivation and purpose and doing something meaningful. But this is one area which has actually been studied well. There's something called the Experience Core, which was studied extensively originally in the Washington, D.C. But it had to do with matching all the resources that exist in our community. Taking people who may be of retirement age but have tremendous resources, life experience, and skills, such as reading, and matching it to unmet needs in the schools. And it's not hard to imagine that our society more and more is going to have to adopt this model. Make older people valued and actually contributory based on all their experience and their knowledge to many, many unmet needs. And this has been studied, and obviously there's benefit to the children and a tremendous benefit as well to the older people who were engaged in the Experience Corps and who were studied over many years, originally in the Washington, D.C. area. So thank you, Fred, and thanks everyone for picking up on some good ideas. I invite everyone to scan the page, find a question we haven't yet addressed. I saw a hand back here.
It's not on the page, but I think I heard you refer to something, sleep hygiene.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure what sleep hygiene is.
All right.
And
You called me on that, so I'm going to take that on.
whatever it is, the absence of it is surely a cause of stress and tension.
Yeah.
So what is it?
The question was about sleep hygiene and what is it? I think that's a fair summary of what it is. And why did I say sleep hygiene, which is a little bit of a funny word. And I find sometimes I use that when I'm in patients, and it's a little bit of a clinical word. And most of the time, nobody has any idea what I'm talking about. So first of all, what is sleep?
Rest.
Rest? Okay.
Restorative time.
Restorative time. That's interesting. We could talk, actually there's a whole area of very interesting research about restorative aspects of sleep. But anybody else, what's sleep?
A time when your conscious cognitive faculties are put on hold.
Interesting. Actually, I like your idea. I like where you're going. I'm not fully in agreement. I think there is an element of continual consciousness, not in the way we often think of, but that's a whole other discussion. But thank you, because it really is a different conscious experience, probably serves a very physiological role from what I'm hearing in the audience here. Yes, we have another comment on what is sleep.
Gives you a chance to resolve issues that you don't always address when you're awake.
Gives you a chance to resolve issues that we don't always address when we're awake. So it's a very productive time, it sounds like. Okay, here's what I know about sleep. It's probably everything you said, but it's also extremely necessary. And your need for sleep changes over the course of your lifetime. A newborn has a very crazy sleep-wake cycle, but that's what that newborn needs. As you get older and as you get busy, your needs change and your sleep patterns change. But one thing for sure is that there is a tremendous problem with people who do not get sufficient sleep. And I'm not here to diagnose anyone or tell them how much they need or don't need, but sleep deprivation undoubtedly has really adverse consequences for the brain. And this has been studied in young people in the military. When I was a fellow, I was a research fellow at Columbia, there was a very interesting and active research program in how sleep deprivation affects your cognition and your brain processes. And I don't have to convince anyone that that's the case, but it also makes you irritable. It also just ruins your day. So take care of yourself at night and you'll be having a better day. There's quite a lot to be said about the biology and physiology of sleep, but I want to tell you a little bit about what I know about what I said, sleep hygiene. And again, this is not brain science. This is commonsensical things. But the number one thing for sleep hygiene is regularity. We're talking about a cycle. So people, to the extent possible, should have a common time to go to sleep and wake up. People have sometimes problems going to sleep, and if that's your problem, there are a whole host of behaviors that one could do to address the problem why you're not going to sleep. The most common reason why people can't fall asleep, I think probably a quarter of the people have this problem here. So why can't people fall asleep?
Because your mind doesn't stop.
Okay, there are two factors here, and these are both important parts of sleep hygiene. One of them is that you're distracted. You're not busy doing the business of going to sleep. You're watching TV, you're doing something else, you're trying to multitask even when your brain is telling you enough. So that's one thing. The other thing is that your mind doesn't stop. Rumination, constantly going over and over the things that happened to you that day, usually the worst things, the things that bothered you most. So those are two elements of problems going to sleep. And the approach with sleep hygiene is first figuring out what your problem is and why you have it, and then you can begin to address it. And again, this is always highly personalized, but you get an example. The other thing that sleep hygiene really has to do with creating the proper environment in addition to the time. So you should always go to sleep preferably in the same location and wake up in the same location. And some people have little rituals or behaviors that they do in the hours before they know they want to go to sleep. So their body and their mind is preparing themselves. So there's quite a lot to be said for what somebody could do if they have a sleep disorder. The real point for today is that sleep is necessary and has really, really drastic consequences for your brain function, both the next day and over the course of a lifetime if people are chronically sleep deprived. So now let's go back to the sheet. Who's got one? Nobody here has talked about research yet, but that's okay. I'm not gonna drive that home. I personally believe research is a great thing, not just for researchers, but for participants. But, can I tempt anyone with one of the questions on the right side of the page. So at least we focused on one of the questions here. The question is, what is your view about how participating in brain aging research can be good for you personally? And we're going to stay on this question for a little bit because the answers aren't so obvious. But I believe it's true. Any ideas? How being a research participant can be good for you personally?
Gain more cognitive information.
Okay, so here's an important aspect. One of them is you gain more cognitive information. Some people believe knowledge is power, some people don't. I'm going to leave that question aside. But it is very much the case. In many research programs, you will have access to professionals and various cognitive tests and evaluations and impressions that you will not get anywhere else. And I'm talking, even you guys have great doctors, I'm sure. You know, at White Plains Hospital, they're great doctors. At Einstein, they're great doctors. But most of the time, you don't get the level of testing. And so I'll give you an example from my personal experience. When I was a fellow, and now that I'm on faculty, for each research subject, we would convene meetings. And at the meetings would include, this would all be confidential without personally identifiable information, of course, a neurologist, a psychiatrist sometimes, neuropsychologist, social worker, people who just knew about aging. Sometimes there would be a whole room full of people, a backup neurologist, another psychiatrist. And you know what? We would all be thinking about your brain if you were that participant. And that is actually something I dare say you will not find anywhere in the standard healthcare delivery system. And that is what we need, but it's just not available. But it's highly specialized, personalized consideration. One might ask, well, how does that benefit? Okay, so all these people are testing you up and down. You know, they're thinking about you, talking about you. They've got you figured out. So now, does anyone think that might be helpful to you personally? Yes.
I think giving you insight into your own functioning.
Insight into your own functioning. I love it.
Is there a lot of feedback?
Is there feedback? This is actually an interesting and an important factor. I'll tell you, there's all sorts of different kinds of research. People have notions about research. Research I've described and that I've been involved with primarily has to do with observational research. So we test people and we observe them and we learn about them and we follow them as they age. And there is opportunity for feedback, and especially if there are any red flags, we notify them and their providers. You know, there are other types of research where some of the information is not available to the participants, sometimes for scientific reasons, right? You'll never know if you got the placebo or the drug in a drug trial for scientific reasons. And there are a lot of sensitive issues that sometimes are not really discussed with the participants because that's not the point of the research. For example, sometimes genetic information is not disclosed to the participant because it could potentially get them thinking about all sorts of things that the research wasn't intended to do. However, I will say this. As a research participant, you have a number of rights. And actually, it can be very empowering because you could go to the investigators and the scientists and the doctors and say, you know, I really do want to know fully what you found, what you've investigated. And in most cases, they're